First up, though, I want to talk about an event that happened at Oxford University on Wednesday night. It's my old uni, and it is just the latest university which is seeing effectively what is the death of free speech, with the growth of what we now call, I'm in favour of free speech, but ... People saying anything I disagree with isn't allowed. There was a meeting organised by a group called the Fair Play for Women, Nicola Williams, and they've organised a number of meetings. There's a meeting actually organised with the Quakers, the religious group at Oxford University for the Students' Union, and it has prompted a wave of criticism. This, though, after Oxford students protested outside the meeting. What were they there to discuss? Something incredibly controversial. Well, just the reform of gender laws. It did actually lead to 3 hours of protesters standing with megaphones blocking the entrance for other people as well. We're going to talk about this because I think it's incredibly important that A, we can discuss anything in this country, and B, unless you are actually inciting hatred or violence against someone, you can say anything you want. Let's talk about this with Nicola Williams. She's spokeswoman for a Fair Play for Women and joins us now. Good morning to you, Nicola.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, look, for most people going about their normal daily business who don't deal with this, particularly this trans issue, can we go back to a bit of background on this? Because I've had this accusations of transphobia simply for talking about this. There is a big battle going on right now over two things. One is the reform of gender laws that is being proposed and has actually got the support of government ministers, which a number of people are concerned about, and I know your group's very concerned about. But also I suppose the definition of what a woman is, whether you can be a trans woman, can you be pre-op, can you be a man with all the biological parts of a man but call yourself a woman, and should the law have to recognise you as a woman? But can you just explain, first of all, just to get the background so people know why this is relevant to them, to us, to everybody, what the reform of gender laws would actually mean?
Okay, so at the moment we've got the Equality Act, and that gives rights to trans people and to women, and that's great. But what the new law, the changes to the law will be, is to something called the Gender Recognition Act, and that will allow basically any man to change his legal sex status to female by signing a form. So
no medication, no going to doctors, no operations. He can just say, I self-identify as a woman.
Yes. So at the moment, a male, if he wants to change his sex to female because he's trans, there needs to be a doctor to say that there's a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and also 2 years living in role as a woman to prove that it's serious. Yeah. The change is going to wipe all that away and say that someone can simply say they are a woman, a man can say they are a woman, and in reverse, a woman can say they are a man. And get a new birth certificate.
And that means, for instance, they could have the right to enter, say, a woman's refuge. They could be, if they go to prison, they could demand that they're put into a woman's prison, not a man's prison.
Yes, specifically with prison, yes. So the prison service will look at the birth certificate and decide where they go. And so if a man has, or a prisoner already in prison, could just decide to sign a form, change to female, not change physically, not even have to dress as a woman, just simply sign the form, and then he will be eligible to be living in a women's prison. And that is just outrageous. And so, of course, women must be able to talk about those changes because, although this is a law for trans people, for the benefit of trans people,
it affects other people. There's a trade-off of rights.
People.
Well, okay,
exactly.
So your organisation, we've spoken to you before on the show, but at Women's Place UK, you've been arranging meetings around the country to discuss this issue. And this was hosted, this meeting on Wednesday night was hosted by the Quakers at Oxford University. And there was a huge protest by the Students' Union. Now, why were they protesting against this meeting? To discuss a change in the law, which seems to me to be something that we should all be allowed to do, as a tender meeting and talk about a change in the law.
Just to clarify, this was not a meeting made in conjunction with the Quakers. It was simply we booked a private meeting in a Quakers venue.
Right.
So,
So nothing to
the
do with
Quakers
them, really.
Quakers had
Okay.
nothing to know. They were
Yeah.
simply the venue. So this isn't even on university campus.
Right. And
This was a
but now
private.
you and they have been
Okay.
accused of hosting a transphobic feminist meeting.
Yes.
So you had a bunch of students. How many students were out? And by the way, we did actually ask for Students' Union to speak to us, but couldn't get a response. I don't know if they get up this early. But
Well.
so I think that we tried yesterday as well. But so
Yeah.
you had a bunch of students. Tell us how many and tell us what they did.
Okay. Well, first of all, we had the venue was kept a secret because we didn't want there to be disruptions. But it's
Previous events
few
have had to
hours
be cancelled,
beforehand.
haven't they, as a result of
Exactly.
disruption?
So a few hours before it was due to start, the information was leaked, and so the venue was inundated with abusive phone calls and emails, all trying to bully them into cancelling. Luckily, the event management team did not cancel. So what happened then was that there was a very noisy and intimidating protest held in the doorway of the venue with about 70 to 80 students. They were all chanting slogans. They said things like that the reason they were here was because we were an anti-trans hate group, and that they were here to support the trans people that face violence from our groups. I mean, it would be laughable if this wasn't so serious, because my talk was literally about women's rights and the law, because, you know, these are our existing legal rights, and so we need to be able to know what they are and talk about them.
And you've been accused. I mean, I've been debating with people online since we've discussed this previously, and anyone who questions. So if someone says we had a debate about what was going on Mumsnet, people debating whether or not someone with a penis was a woman. And I think most of us would say no, they're not. They're a man. This statement alone is now will now prompt an accusation of transphobia.
Yes, well, any even discussion of women's rights is now apparently transphobic because, I mean, what's happening here? These aren't normal student protests. You know, this was something like it was cult-like, really. Everyone was parroting the same slogans, and when we asked them, you know, why are you here? No students actually could engage with us and actually explain why. You know, so there's no critical engagement. So Oxford, you know, students, all students really have got a proud history of political protesting, but it was a shambles on Wednesday night, you know, an embarrassment.
It's not just
really,
a shambles and embarrassment,
they,
it's an infringement of people's civil liberties. I mean, this is, I think, a very big...
well,
and I say a lot of
exactly.
people will say, what on earth has got to do with me? And I would say, well, there's about equality, and absolutely, I completely want trans people to be living freely and have the same rights as everyone else in this country and be recognised and respected. However, there are issues about that, any extra rights, perhaps, which might be questioned by the vast majority of people when they're told about them, as we've discussed, that actually whether those rights are appropriate and whether or not they take away rights from other people, and that needs to be discussed. And the right of people to discuss that freely without being labelled as hate mongers.
Exactly. I mean, it's normal, and you know, it's crucial that when a law is going to be changed, everyone that's impacted must be able to talk about it, because that's how democracy works.
No, Nicola, it's how democracy used to work. That's the terrible thing. Unless we fight against. Well, look, you keep. As far as I'm concerned, you should keep up the good work, because I think people need to be talking about this. Is not about anti-trans people, absolutely not. But it is about talking about free speech and the right of people to discuss. When some people's rights trample on each other.